So the second presentation of the webinar today is about the QUALICHeCK Source Book on EPC compliance. I'll start with some general thoughts on compliance and what makes compliance frameworks effective, and then do a short presentation EPC on energy performance certificate compliance and how the source book should be used. We need a source book on EPC compliance frameworks. This is the you saw in presentation also. It explains why there is a need for action regarding compliance rates. We see that from the concerted action questionnaire done in 2014, sorry, 50% of countries have an idea about the compliance rate of new buildings, but around 50% don't. So there's a need for action in this respect. When we talk about compliance rates in context of the EPC, it is good to see what types of non-compliance are we confronted with. And this is what you see on this slide. Types of EPC non-compliance can be allocated to three categories, namely no reporting, wrong reporting, and not meeting the energy performance requirements. So reporting means that the reporting requirements of the EPC procedure or specification of the works are not met. Reporting means that there are substantial differences between the data reported and the correct data according to agreed procedure or specifications of the works. And not meeting the energy performance requirements means the required energy performance or specifications of the works are not achieved. And this may happen, for instance, if the minimum building energy performance level is not met, if minimum performance requirement for a system or component is not met, or, for instance, a non-certified contractor has performed work which required certification. So types of EPC non-compliance which can occur. And when we look at the reasons for non-compliance, we see that there are three main reasons. The procedures on what must be done in order to determine EPC input data are not clear. The procedures on how to decide on non-compliance and related actions are not clear. And the control and sanctioning mechanisms to be applied in cases of non-compliance are not clear. So in fact, these three reasons for non-compliance are at this time also the key factors of success for compliance schemes. When you remember the last slides in the previous presentation. So to have clear procedures on what must be done, to have clear procedures on how to decide, and to have clear control and sanctioning mechanisms, these are the key factors of success for effective compliance frameworks. Just to explain a little bit, or to a little bit clearer where are or what the potential problem is, I would give an example which highlights the need for robust compliance framework. Imagine an investor orders a very energy efficient building, and the EC shows that the objective is met. So they see it's a very good energy efficiency. Then the compliance checks highlight an error regarding input data for the calculation, where PC result is worse than stated, but still meets the legal requirements, which means the checked EPC shows energy performance is not as good as expected. There is no sanction for this not meeting the requirements as set by the investor. because the requirement is still met. However, the investor does not get the building expected, and this has an impact. It creates problems regarding trust in the EPC, regarding market acceptance, and in fact, it means that the compliance framework needs improvement. So this is just one more example for the problematic situations which can occur in the context of compliance or non-compliance. So the work done in the QUALICHeCK project and the concerted action 3 showed that there is a lack of effective compliance frameworks in the building sector. Why is so? When compared with the automotive sector, we see that the strict compliance framework regarding cars, for instance, technical checks which have to be performed, or traffic rules which have to be obeyed. And the explanation might be that these strict compliance frameworks are about road safety, and road safety affects everybody. The majority understands it and supports the rules. How is it in energy efficiency in buildings? Do people understand the complexity of challenge? This question is very important because it is connected with societal support. We need societal support for developing effective compliance frameworks. Please remember one of the last slides, it said that lack of political support is one of the main barriers for implementing compliance frameworks. So what will increase political support or political will? Societal support is paramount. So with societal support, what will happen? Enforcement of legislation which is not respected will hardly be effective, and it will be extremely expensive. So achieving societal support is key. How do we make people understand? The challenge is that the negative impact due to lack of energy efficiency is not so evident if compared with the road safety example explained above. So this is why societal support was extremely or is extremely important in the development of compliance framework. So we need compliance frameworks supported by the society. So an effective compliance framework addresses the main reasons for non-compliance and is therefore structured into 3 parts. We need technical procedures to obtain and prove compliance data. So there must be clear technical procedures what must be done. Then, as the second part, we need robust legal procedures in case of non-compliance. There should be clear legal procedures how to decide on non-compliance and related actions. And handling of non-compliance in practice needs an effective control and sanctioning system if non-compliance is detected. So these 3 elements are essential to obtain a compliant EPC. This is also the structure of an effective compliance framework is also reflected in the source book of EPC compliance. The source book contains all elements of an effective EPC compliance framework in 3 parts. Part 1 on clear procedures how to determine EPC input data, Part 2 checking compliance, and Part 3 compliance enforcement effectiveness. You see the cover page of the source book. It is still the draft, which is under elaboration at the moment to complete the final version, which will be then also available on the QUALICHeCK website. This draft of the source book was read by stakeholders to collect their input and their feedback and integrate it in the final version. What exactly will you find in the source book? And 40 contributions about elements of compliance frameworks. This here is an example how such a contribution looks like. So headline or the headline will tell you which element of the compliance framework is presented in the chapter. In this chapter, it's about appropriate sources to implement compliance checking. Then you will find a paragraph on text and motivation, which tackles the question why to deal with this aspect. The next paragraph will give you some ideas you should try to avoid. So the description of examples of problematic situations. The next paragraph will give you some ideas what to consider when making decisions on the compliance framework. And the last paragraph will show you some good examples from other countries. So it's like a guide how to implement and learn from good examples. How did other countries deal with the challenge? So this book contains more than 40 topics described the way presented in this example. So it means that the source book is not it is not the intention that people read the source book from the beginning to the end, but maybe just pick some chapters where they already know problems or where they have identified that they need support. Or it is also, of course, useful to just scan the source book and use like a checklist to consider when developing an effective compliance framework. In the following slides, I will show you some examples of the information you find in the source book. For instance, what to consider regarding resources for effective compliance checking. What is quite evident, financial and human resources to control are limited, and thus solutions will have to be found how to disburden administrative staff. So by improving the efficiency of administrative procedures and by transferring certain tasks to market players. So it's the decision whether to have the control system as part of the authority or as part of a third-party scheme. The ability of an EPC database is a precondition for cost-efficient and effective compliance checks, and is used to select the EPCs to be checked. So the EPC database is crucial for developing a good sampling scheme for control. And the development of the sampling scheme is crucial for the effectiveness of the control system. So the database can give us some information about which building-related energy aspects need most attention because weaknesses are already known, which building-related aspects should be investigated because there are hints regarding potentially problematic situations, and building-related aspects should be investigated because other information is available. So these aspects are important, and the EPC database can help to determine a sampling scheme according to the defined priorities. So the next example will deal with the EPC database. It is an example about exemplary problematic situations regarding effective compliance checking. So the biggest problem is if there is no central EPC database, and therefore the basis for setting up an effective sampling scheme is missing. Another challenge is if the EPC database was designed in an isolated way and does not provide all appropriate interfaces to fully exploit the potential for setting up an effective and cost-efficient sampling scheme. Yes, and another challenge is if the EPC database does not contain a publicly accessible part and thus prevents interested individuals from checking basic information published in advertisements. So problematic situations should be avoided if possible when developing a compliance framework. The source book also provides information about existing approaches, so good examples, how other countries deal with compliance issues. For instance, in UK and in Ireland, interested individuals check energy indicators published in commercial media by searching this information in the public part of the EPC database. In France, there is a third-party scheme in place. Private companies are entitled to and there are clear rules like 8 EPC reports for each expert must be checked. In addition, outside control per expert once every 5 years must be carried out. In term, the Flemish Energy Agency checks on an annual basis, and yes, I will not here because you listened to the presentation by Xavier. So the last example deals with what to consider regarding the handling of non-compliance in practice. So it is actually so that stakeholders respect clear enforcement procedures resulting in adequately severe sanctions. So this is important. It's important that, first of all, there is not just sanction, but the sanction should address the room for improvement. So there should be the opportunity to correct a mistake and to improve. This is important because it will not only ensure compliance, but also assure the quality of EPCs in general and contribute to continuous improvement. It is also important to consider that there are not only financial sanctions, such as penalties, but also actions like additional mandatory training. And of course, handling of non-compliance in practice must be effective, cost-efficient, affordable. The source presents this information in a very, very detailed way. There is the opportunity to find still more information on specific approaches in the QUALICHeCK reports and, above all, in the QUALICHeCK fact sheets. And also the Flemish approach, the fact will be published soon. So we find more detailed information than in Xavier's presentation in one of the fact sheets to come. They are available on the QUALICHeCK website. So for my presentation, I would like to come to the question how to use the source book. So of course the source book is intended to be a guideline for developing better frameworks for EPC compliance and enforcement. And is also intended as an input for discussion with stakeholders in order to ensure societal support. You remember the example explained, so I tried to compare the compliance frameworks related buildings with the ones with cars. So it is quite simple to explain why road safety is very important. It is not that simple to explain why energy efficiency in buildings is so important. And this is why we think that the source book can also be used or will be very useful for stakeholder involvement. The source book can be used to inform stakeholders about the motivations for an enforcement framework. For instance, sharing experiences of problems with the EPC, wrong information in the EPC, and thus no trust in the EPC. This is one of the biggest problems. It can be used to discuss the procedures for determining the EPC input data. This is part 1 of the source book. It can be used to discuss the principles of the legal framework for compliance and enforcement. This is part 2 of the source book. And it can be used to discuss the principles for practical implementation for the enforcement. This is part 3 of the source book. So this is how the source book can be used during the development of an enforcement framework, enforcement framework. During implementation, the source book can be used for regular evaluation if the procedure is okay or if improvement needed. This was my presentation about the source book on EPC compliance. At the moment, the draft is still available on the website. The final version will be published next year. And this is presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. And I will be happy to answer your questions.